Good evening and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bluddworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today's video is another Castles and Crusades video. I'm still focusing on the Player's Handbook of the 2006 printing, and today I'm going to focus on a subject I usually don't spend very much time talking about, and that is the equipment and encumbrance system of a tabletop RPG. Usually I kind of gloss over those things because, equipment is equipment is equipment. We've seen, I've seen personally probably 50 or more fantasy RPGs, and they almost always have the same exact equipment from one to the next. Same thing with encumbrance. Encumbrance is something that I have experienced through much of my playing as a player, and even as a DM, I frequently just have experienced the hand waving of encumbrance unless it was such a significant amount that the players were kind of forced to think, well, how are we going to get all of this from the dungeon back home again? All right, so and that's typically the only time that people, players start to really think about, well, how much am I actually carrying? Now, as a DM, I occasionally try to enforce it much more, and I'll start, scratching my head. I was like, well, how many, suits of plate armor do you think that you're trying to carry? I've certainly made sure that it's like, no, that suit of armor will not go into that bag of holding because that bag of holding only has 10 pockets that will hold a 1 by 1 square foot, pocket inside, and there's no way you're getting a suit of plate mail armor into that 1 by 1 foot square. So, extra dimensional doesn't mean that there's no limit to how much it'll expand. So when I started reading through the section here in Castles and Crusades, there were some elements of this that really struck me as being something different than what I've experienced, or at least it was something that, for me, I said to myself, I'm going to want to actually hold true to this. So without further ado, let's start taking a look, at this. So I am going to show that this is the book that I'm currently going through. It's the Player's Handbook. It's this is like a special edition of it. Has a nice little one of those strap things that you can, show off where you're currently at or where you've left off. For some reason, it's just like a silk bookmark cord there. Unfortunately, I don't have PDFs for this, so as I'm going through it, I'm just going to bring it up on my desktop camera, and you won't be able to follow along with it as much as I could if I were using a PDF. When I get to the more up-to-date versions of this of this game system, I do have PDFs for those, and I will be able to show those off. So without further ado, let's start taking a look at the book passages themselves. So here we start off with equipment, and nice little graphic here for that. And I'm going to start reading. And like I said, you won't be able to follow along. You won't be able to see because it's a glossy finish on the page, number one. And so you're getting glare. And number two, it's just harder to see. You're not going to be able to focus in on this as much. So let me just start reading. Perhaps one of the most enjoyable aspects of character creation is purchasing equipment before beginning play. This step is often overlooked in terms of its ability to personalize a character. All right, and that is very, very true. You know, back in the day, old school gameplay, you thought about, well, who has the 10-foot pole, who has the caltrops, who has these other various things that everybody pretty much needs to at least have a small portion of it. And that was always an important part of our old school gaming, was the actual adventure equipment that people were carrying. And that's certainly something that I always enjoyed having the players think about, was to, what is our adventure gear, and, how we should be carrying as much of this as we possibly can. So that's one element of it that I think is really important, that we make sure that everyone is carrying adventure gear that they may or may not need, but you just never know. Be prepared. Another consideration is the culture in which the characters live. All societies have their peculiarities and own identity types of equipment, weapons, and armors. Lanterns purchased in medieval Bavaria were of a significantly different appearance than those purchased in Baghdad bazaars. Equipment also should also range in appearance and structure, though not function, from one culture and society to the next. Personalizing equipment is, in this manner, goes a long way in establishing a milieu and context. Very often, I mean, there are tropes in our hobby where it's like they've become coin terms, like sword and board. All right, so if you're a fighter, you're expected to carry a shield and use a sword. Sword is the most common magic item that will ever be found, and it's almost always a long sword on top of that. And there's no reason why in a particular region of whatever world you're playing in that you can't change that up. All right, so if you're in an area that the scimitar is really the weapon of choice, then you're going to find more magical swords that are scimitars rather than long swords or short swords or what have you. All right, so thinking about equipment as a statement of personality for characters is actually very important, and I think it's something, as they state here, it's something that is often overlooked. Characters should also keep in mind that they are attempting to prepare themselves for whatever should befall them and should equip themselves accordingly, as I pointed out already. A foray into a dungeon is much different than a trek across a frozen plateau. Combining the two and equipping a character becomes a challenge. It is difficult to accommodate the player and castle keeper with every piece of equipment that might be desired. However, the castle keeper should be able to determine if an item the players are seeking is available based on technology, location, and skills of local inhabitants. If it is to be available, estimate the price of the item by comparing it to similar items and such. So, and they give a little a basic rule of thumb in how to create items that and statting them out very quickly, which I really like. That's actually a pretty cool section, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. So we have starting gold, very common. So a fighter or ranger will start with between 30 and 240 gold pieces, a rogue, assassin, or bard between 30 and 120, a barbarian or monk between 20 and 80, a wizard or illusionist between 10 and 100, a cleric or druid between 20 and 200, and finally a knight or a paladin between 60 and 240. So you see that pretty much the more armor they can wear, the higher their starting gold pieces is. But it also makes sense because these are your martial classes. They usually make up the bulk of the military or the constable corps. I know there's another word for that. The security forces kind of thing. So, knights and paladins and fighters and rangers are going to be a lot more common amongst establishment armed forces. And so they will have access to more money because they'll have access to better equipment right from the start. Whereas the other ones, which are much more rural, like if you look at the barbarians or even monks, which are supposed to be somewhat non-materialistic, or druids in particular as well. Clerics tend to have that vestment, so I'm kind of surprised that they're not a little bit higher, but they're at least not at the lowest end. They're between 20 and 200 as opposed to 10 and 100 with wizards and illusionists. But again, armor availability and weapon availability plays, I think, a bigger role in in the starting gold pieces for each of the classes or class combinations. So we'll take a look at the stat here, and I'll try to spread it out here. So here we have on the top line padded armor. It costs 5 gold pieces. It grants a +1 to armor class. This is ascending armor class system. And it has a weight of 10, so 10 pounds. And then it has an encumbrance value of 2 with a W next to it. And what that W means is that this is an item that will be 1 less encumbrance value if worn. That's what the W stands for. The W stands for wearable. So if something is wearable and it has an encumbrance value, when worn, it will have 1 less encumbrance value. So you could wear padded armor with just a 1 encumbrance value, but if you were carrying it in your hands, it would have a 2 encumbrance value. And they go on, they're talking about, so we have the same thing with various types of shields, and they have varying AC. What I really like about this, and this goes a little bit into combat as well, which I will focus on later, but the size of the shield also implies how many attacks you will be able to use that shield against if if someone is attacking or if a number of people are attacking you. So a small shield will only be able to block an individual attack coming at you. Thereafter, the shield is no longer giving you that additional +1 to armor class for the remainder of that round. All right, and then the next round, again, you'll be able to focus your defense against 1 attack coming at you, and then any additional. Once you move up to medium shields can block up to 2 attacks per round. Large scale shields up to 3 attacks per round. And then Pavis. Pavis is like those, you've seen them where they're almost like a portable, like a riot shield that you can actually wedge into the ground and hide behind it. And that protects against all attacks coming from that direction only. All right. And so it will grant you a +6 AC against all attacks coming from that direction. So it doesn't matter how many attacks are actually coming at you. You're assumed to basically have effectively cover behind that Pavis shield. Helmets, all worn, but again, so like a helmet, like an armet or a bassinet, they have a 1 encumbrance value, but it becomes a 0 when you're wearing it. All right, so there is no weight value to a helmet that only has, and most helmets have just ones. You don't get to a 2 until you get to great helmet, and that has a 2 encumbrance value, but that still declines down to 1 when you're wearing it. Weapons have universally just an encumbrance value, and weapons have a fairly large amount of encumbrance value. I mean, with the exception of brass knuckles, which will have a 0 if you're wearing them and a 1 if you're just carrying them. Same thing with the cestus, but almost everything has either a 2, in some cases a 1, like a dirk or a dagger, only have a 1 encumbrance value. And that's whether or not they're sheathed, and on like your waistband, rather than just carrying them as well, which I think is a little bit odd that they don't now. This might have changed in a later version of, a later printing of Castles and Crusades, and I'll look to see if they made that change. So I've spoken quite a bit about encumbrance value, and I'm going to spend more time with that in a few minutes, but we have missile weapons, we have transport. So this is a long list of different types of transport and tack for transport. So that's something that I find really interesting, and it kind of shows you how much detail Castles and Crusades is putting into traveling. And so you have various types of barding, you have bits and bridles, you have a longboat, you have a rowboat, you have a skiff, you have a small boat, you have a canoe, you have a cart, a chariot, a coach, a donkey, feed per day for any animal. You have harnesses, you have heavy horse, light horse, mules, oxen, I should say, ponies. You have saddlebags, sandal blanket, a sled, a wagon, a walrus. Very, very interesting for a mount or pulling. You have a heavy war horse, a light war horse, and a war pony, which, hey, that sounds pretty cool to have a war pony for your halfling paladins, if that's even possible. More equipment, and we go now into the basic adventure equipment, going all the way through practically 2 full pages, 2 full columns of that kind of equipment. You have clothing, and clothing that also has weather functions to clothing as well. So that makes that's of importance. And then we have provisions and lodging for every day. So all aspects of equipment that the players will need for their personal equipment, the players will carry for adventure equipment. They have equipment assigned to different types of transportation. They have different types of transportation. They have clothing that will have, summer weight and winter weights, and a variety of different types of clothing, and then finally various types of provisions. And from what I understand, the later printings included even more on top of that. So let's talk a little bit about determining encumbrance. Now, these rules are going to change from the 2006 printing to the 2010 printing, and I will spend time talking about that when I get out of this section here. But determining encumbrance, each character has an encumbrance rating, an ER. The encumbrance rating for a character has a base of 10. That means all characters start with 10 regardless of their strength, and then it is modified by their strength modifier. So if you have a strength of that grants a +2 modifier, then your encumbrance rating will be a 12. That's the 10 plus 2. That gives you a 12 encumbrance rating. All right. These bonuses for prime attributes stack so that a character with both strength and constitution as a prime would gain a +4 to their ER. So it's not just a rating based on their strength, but also their constitution as well. And those are stackable. There are 5 categories of encumbrance: none, light, moderate, heavy, and overburdened. All right. The amount of equipment that can be carried and the category into which the character's encumbrance total falls is affected by the character's ER determined above. The following chart indicates the amount that can be carried and into which categories the character's total encumbrance falls. No character can carry more than 5 times their ER. All right, so you start with none, and none goes from 0 to 1 times their ER. All right, so your basic character has a 10, and let's say they have no modifiers. Then if they're carrying either nothing to up to 10 EV, which is their encumbrance value, they will have no impact on their abilities to move, and that includes moving distance, and it also affects their dexterity checks. For example, the ancient and wizened priest of Thoth, Memon, has a strength of 7 and a -1 strength modifier. He also has a constitution as one of his 3 primes. As such, his ER is 11 due to the 10 base modified by the -1 for his strength modifier and a +2 for his constitution prime. Right? So that constitution prime is going to give you automatically a +2 to your ER. All right, so we'll continue on. On the trip to an ancient burial ground to lay a soul properly to rest, Memon expects trouble, so he is carrying a lot of material with him. His equipment encumbrance value adds up to 17. Memmon's categories for encumbrance are none, 0 to 11, light, 12 to 22, moderate, 23 to 33, and heavy, 34 to 44. And overburdened is 45 to 55. With a EV total of 17, Memon is lightly encumbered and suffers the penalties for that category. All right. Now, they give an alternate or ad hoc encumbrance, and that's what I was talking about, where if you have items that aren't in the list, of any of the equipment lists, and you wanted to you wanted to create the EV for them, they give you a chart in order to figure out how to create an EV. So if the item is naturally very light, it's going to have a -2 to EV. Very light constitutes anything under 1 pound in total, like feathers. All right. Light is a -1 to EV. It's under 6 pounds, like cloth. Heavy is a +3 EV, under 24 pounds, such as steel. And very heavy is a +5 EV, 25 pounds and up, like marble, like the stone marble. Weapons that are balanced will have a -1 to their EV. If they're bulky, they will have 2 times the EV. Items that are formless will have a -1 to EV, such as cloth objects with mutable forms. Narrow is times 1/2 EV, less than 2 inches in width. So if something is very narrow, you will cut its EV in half. Worn and capacity objects, I'm just going to get down to the modifiers for the various amounts of encumbrance. So none obviously has no effect, and you actually won't be able to get this. I'm down here at the very bottom, and I'm at the limit where I can move my camera to. Perhaps I can do. Actually, I could do this. But you're still not going to really be able to see what I'm looking at because of the glare. Light is movement is reduced by 1/4. It's a +1 challenge level to all dexterity based checks. And if we go to overburdened, the move reduced to 1 foot per round. All right, automatically fail all dexterity based checks, lose dexterity bonus to AC. All right, so as you are getting more and more burdened, you're going to have more and more negative effects for being overburdened. And then we have a section here where it talks about expert weapons and armor. So, and I really like this, although they don't give any mechanical effects to it, but you can create these effects as a castle keeper, and you can modify existing equipment by adding to its value, adding to the length of time that you'd have to wait for it to be constructed for you, and then you can give it various bonuses, like a +1 to damage, or a +1 to hit, a +1 to hit and damage, and even you can add bonuses or increases as a detriment to its encumbrance value as well. And they detail this, pretty well, just describing it. Skilled blacksmiths are able to create exceptional weapons and armor. And I've always liked this version better than just having a lot of magic items out there. I'd prefer to have fewer magic items, but if the players have enough gold pieces to requisition a highly skilled crafter of weapons or armor to get to work and make them a custom piece, it's going to be very expensive, but they'll also use materials that are lighter materials, more durable perhaps, and they will have the benefits of practically having like a magic suit of armor without it having to be magical. All right. So again, there's a number of things that you can modify here, whether it's a +1. So they're talking about weapons here. So +1 to damage is just a very keen weapon. A +1 to hit is one that's very light and easy to maneuver. One that is giving you a +1 to hit and damage is going to cost you a fortune, because it's carrying in. When I talk about a fortune, so I'll read the actual amount. So these items gain a +1 bonus to damage. In some rare instances, weapons are so crafted that they gain a +1 to damage and bonus. However, these items cost 25 times the cost of the normal item. For example, an expert longsword that gains a +1 damage bonus will cost 150 gold pieces. A longsword that gains a +1 to damage and a +1 to hit would cost 375 gold pieces. Then if you wanted to even add another element to this, the longsword being made of a very high tempered steel, let's say, now it is lighter, stronger, sharper, faster, and you're going to have a +1 to hit, a +1 to damage, and a -1 to armor value. And now you could start doubling that and going up to 50 times the cost, the regular cost of it. And they have a very similar system for armor as well. So before I go into magic, magic is going to be the next section. So as you can see, it's a fairly simple system, right? Once you see what your character can carry, and you suit up your character, and they have selected all of their items that they're going to carry, you'll probably find yourself in a situation where it's like, wow, I was looking, and I had this when I was kind of looking at the equipment for my thief character that I had created in the first episode of this. I was like, wait, I can't carry a short sword, wear my leather armor, wear a leather helmet, and carry a shield, which thieves can carry shields in this, or rogues, I should say, can carry shields in this, as long as they're small and such, and still have a dagger that was an encumbrance value of a 2. I was running out of my encumbrance value. How am I carrying my thieves kit? How am I carrying 50 feet of rope? How am I carrying some of these other items that I'm going to want to carry with me? And then I'm leaving myself no room to carry treasure. And that's where all of these other parts of the system come into play, is that an adventure party, and my current AD&D first edition adventure party actually travels around with with henchmen. In this case, now it's an orc that they have converted to their purposes, and and he travels around taking care of their horses when they're traveling. But everywhere they go, they have their horses. They sometimes have a cart with them. They have all the means that they need in order to at least bring large portions of treasure that they come across on back to whatever home base they're operating out of. And in some cases, they have to go back and forth for very large dungeon complexes that they've cleared. But for the most part, they actually have to think about, what is my character carrying? Who has what? Who has room for this? They started rejecting coins of a low value coin. So they're not going to pick up 4,000 copper pieces if they only have a few pounds left before they start becoming over encumbered. So they're going to pass up copper pieces for silver pieces. They'll pass up silver pieces for electrum, or electrum for gold, and so on. So gold for platinum. they look for ways to consolidate their wealth into the easiest ways to carry their wealth around with them. So they're usually converting coins to gemstones, and then gemstones to possibly wearable jewelry, which will not have an encumbrance value. All right, and it's a way that they can walk around with their with some of their wealth with them, rather than having it left in some place that could get discovered by other individuals, and then they lose their wealth back in their homes. So it's it really is, like I said, a simple system. It's a simple that makes sense. Like when I read this here, I was like, wow, that really makes a lot of sense. And I think that it is a great way to encourage your players to think about their characters and what kind of equipment are they going to carry, but also, as it started off talking about, it gives you a way of changing up your character's appearance, making it much more unique than just, oh, you're carrying a spear, and that spear is like the same other thousand of spears that's in the weapons racks in the local weaponsmith shop. You can, a longsword isn't a longsword isn't a longsword. That's just talking about the length of the blade. All right. They can have all kinds of differences in appearance, but it still functions as a longsword. But it allows the players to describe their characters in a much more unique way. And this kind of a system here, it really does encourage that kind of thinking, that kind of, quite frankly, that's role playing. All right. And but it is still tying it to the mechanics of having to worry about and think about encumbrance, which I think is often overlooked. I make that mistake myself as a DM, and it's certainly something after reading this that I'm going to refocus my consideration of what kind of things are out there in the you know in the realm of the players having to think about different ways to prevent their characters from becoming over encumbered, because that's a significant downside if they do end up being over encumbered for whatever reason or another. So once again, I hope you enjoyed this video. I will continue in a couple days with the next in the series, and we are going to start talking about the magic system next. So really looking forward to that. And I have my game on tomorrow. So that will be episode 52. So week 52 of our AD&D first edition campaign. Not sure where we're going to go with it tomorrow. There's a potential that they continues fighting against some hill giants that they come across, or they may decide to continue along their preset journey that they were on, and I'll see where they want to go. I can go in either direction with them tomorrow, so really looking forward to that. Should be cool either way that they choose. So as always, stay safe out there. Enjoy your week. We're into a new week now. It's Monday night. I sometimes lose track of my days when I'm not working every single day. And as always, I look forward to seeing you on the gaming screen sometime soon. You all have a great evening. Take care.